We appreciate our speakers from Axley and Ruddy because we know that QuickBooks and how to view it can be absolutely critical to the success of your business and give you the financial information that you need to operate your business. We have sponsors. We have the Piney Woods Apartment Association.
Thank you all.
And then we also have Farmers State Bank. So, you know, we couldn't put on these without our sponsors, and we appreciate everything they do for our community. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Cassandra Stokes. She is with the Small Business Development Center at Angelina College. She is a business advisor, and she will introduce our speakers.
Okay, so a couple of housekeeping rules first. You have an exit behind you, an exit in front of you. The restrooms are down the hall behind you. And so we ask that you please silence your phones so that they don't accidentally go off. And I want to make sure everybody received a survey. Anyone need a survey? I mean, not a survey, a handout. I'm sorry, handout. Okay, cool. Everybody's got their handouts. Okay, our topic today is QuickBooks Overview with tips and tricks. Over the next hour and a half, we're going to discuss the advantages of using QuickBooks software, as well as the differences between QuickBooks Desktop, which is being phased out, and QuickBooks Online, that platform. They'll also offer many tips and tricks like setting up a new account, as well as transitioning existing desktop accounts over to the platform, the online platform, and many other things. A little bit about Axley and Rhodey. They are a limited liability partnership which was founded in 1949. Their first office was set up in Lufkin, and since then they've grown to 3 more locations. They have one here in Nacogdoches, as well as Jasper and Livingston. They employ almost 100 team members, and their services include accounting, bookkeeping, tax planning and preparation, as well as auditing and assurance and consulting. So many of you may wonder what a QuickBooks Pro Advisor is. So according to the website, QuickBooks website, accounting pros who are interested in joining the Pro Advisor program must study for and pass a rigorous exam. The certification enables them to grow their firm, their skills, and QuickBooks expertise by providing benefits to their clients as well as non-clients. Some of the benefits include like QuickBooks training and QuickBooks customer service. I'm pleased to introduce 2 of Axley and Rhodey's certified QuickBooks Pro Advisors who will be sharing their knowledge with us today. First, we have Madeline. Madeline McClure has worked at Axley and Rhodey for more than 8 years. She currently works in their business services department as a senior specialist. She started working for the firm right out of high school. She enjoys working in payroll because it's structured and there is no gray area with the numbers. I like that. It's either right or wrong. She likes her job because she is always busy and there's never a dull moment. Fun facts about Madeline: she is the proud owner of a pet pig, and she is the self-proclaimed director of fun at the Nacogdoches office. Lauren Vargas, on the left, has worked at Axley and Rhodey for more than 15 years. She currently works in their business services department as a payroll supervisor. She is a Nacogdoches native, is married to the love of her life, and has 2 miniature schnauzers, Snowball and Bullet. Fun fact about Lauren: she would like to be on the Wheel of Fortune someday. Please help me in welcoming Lauren. So I turn it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody. We're happy that so many were able to come today. And if I do stand too far this way and you can't see, just wave me over and I'll move back. Today we were just kind of curious, how many of you are already using QuickBooks Online? So quite a few of you. And then the rest of you are probably contemplating it. Are the rest of you that are not using it yet, are you using desktop QuickBooks? Okay, so this is a good beginner's course and kind of gives you a good overview of QuickBooks Online and some of the features and some of the tips to kind of set things up. The first thing that we wanted to show you today is the dashboard. And to get to it, we're already here, but it's on the left-hand side. Just go to dashboard, and there's two different tabs. There's Get Things Done, and there's the Business Overview. The Getting Things Done is a quick place to see what task you're needing to do, and you also can quickly see the balances of your bank accounts. So it's kind of just a good, quick thing to see, hey, what am I needing to get done? I have 4 bills that are overdue that need to be paid. I have one that's due next week. So it's just kind of a fast way to see what you have in your agenda to get done. The Business Overview tab, right beside it, this is a really neat feature because it has charts and graphs. So you can, without going down and drilling into a bunch of reports, you can quickly see how you're doing. And it gives you a highlight of your P&L, your expenses, bank accounts, invoices, sales, all that just at a really quick look without opening up a bunch of reports. So that can really be a handy feature to see. As you're getting your QuickBooks file set up, you're gonna have to set up users for anybody that you want to have access to your file, including your accountant. You're gonna wanna give them access. So we're gonna show you how to manage your users. And to do that, you're gonna click on the gear icon in the upper right-hand corner. Go to Manage Users. And if you already had users set up in your system, this is just a test file, they would show up there so you could see, okay, I've already given access to Bob, they have an account, and Kelly. But for now, we're gonna set up a user, and to do that, you would just simply go to Add User. And you can give them as much or as little access as you're needing. If you give them the admin rights, they're gonna have full rights. But standard user, you can go in and customize it. For example, if you want somebody just to be able to see reports only, you could even choose that. If you are wanting to set up an invite to your accountant, it's different than just setting up a user because it won't take up one of your spots that you pay for as a user. So you want to be sure you send them an accounting invite. And so it's really just as easy as that you want your accountant, you put in their email address and you hit invite, your accountant gets an email, they click on that and they have access to your account. So it's really painless and easy to invite them. But just make sure that you use that accountant invite so you don't use up one of your user spots. Another thing is from time to time you're gonna have to contact support, whether it be during your setup or you have an issue with payroll. Sometimes support just has to be involved with online. In desktop, there was things that you could fix yourself online. A lot of times you do have to involve support. So when you contact support, they're gonna need your company ID. So we'll show you how to get that so you have it with you. And ready? If you go to the gear icon and go down to your company, additional info, and then there's your company ID right there. And they have a nice feature that you can just click copy because usually the easiest way to get in touch with QuickBooks Online is just to start a chat and then you can just copy and paste that into your chat. So that's really helpful. QuickBooks Online is constantly evolving. They're trying to meet everyone's needs. So you may log in tomorrow and something looks a little bit different than you saw the day before. You're not crazy, it's happened to all of us. They've updated it, they've revised it, they're just trying to keep making it better and better. So if you don't see it, the good rule of thumb is just to click around either in the gear icon or on the left-hand side in your menu. And you'll find it just may have simply moved or changed just a little bit. But for the most part, it's still pretty much the same, just might look slightly different. So once you have your QuickBooks, you're gonna wanna make sure you have your chart of accounts set up. So Madeline's gonna show us how to set up the chart of accounts. If you just go to the gear icon, chart of accounts. And in the upper right-hand corner, you can say new. And choose the appropriate account, whether it be income, expense, whatever you're setting up. And for this example, she's gonna do an expense. Yeah, if you want to tell what you're doing now.
So you'll fill out, QuickBooks Online is super simple with everything. They try to walk you through every single step. So you'll save the account under whatever category it fits. This one we're just gonna do under the main expenses. And then you'll choose a tax form section. Let's just do other miscellaneous. And we're just gonna call this miscellaneous expense. And then you'll hit save. Oh, it doesn't. And it'll pull into your chart of accounts. If you are importing chart of accounts from a different file, you can do that as well instead of just keying them all in. You can just click the little drop down and you'll say import, and you can import from a spreadsheet. There is a sample file that you can download and it'll give you the headers so you'll know how your spreadsheet needs to be formatted. If you want to clean up your chart of accounts, say you have a bunch of miscellaneous accounts that you don't use, you can select them and then you can batch make them inactive. You don't want to delete anything, you just want to make them inactive. If you have duplicate transaction or duplicate accounts, you can also merge accounts. So to merge account, you would simply, let's just say we're going to merge commissions and fees into bank charges. You're going to hit edit. And to merge an account, you have to name the account the exact same. And the tax form section also has to be identical. And then as soon as you make it identical and you hit save, it will say merge accounts. It'll say you already have an account that's named just like that. Make sure you actually want to merge those two because you can't really undo it. So just say yes, merge accounts, and it will combine those two accounts. Eliminates you from having to do a bunch of journal entries or anything else.
And that really is a nice feature because you don't need two of the exact same accounts, just with a slightly different, maybe had office expense pins, and all you really needed was just office expense. Change them to the same name, have that base office expense, and then you can merge them together and you have a nice clean chart of accounts. Another thing that you can set up right off the get-go once you get your QuickBooks file is your vendors. And Madeline's also going to show us how to do that. You're just going to go to expenses and vendors. And then you simply just can click on new vendor. Do you want to talk about that as you fill it out?
You'll fill out all applicable information. If this is someone that you're going to issue a 1099, you want to make sure you have their address and their either social or EIN. And you can also hit track payments. There is a report that you can print later that will pull all of the ones that you hit track payments on, and it'll pull all of those vendors to that report, so it's easier to do 1099s. There's a lot of other information, their email, phone number. If you're sending invoices through QuickBooks, you will want their email. Fax, might not necessarily need that. A lot of it you don't technically have to fill out, but you will want to make sure you have the display name, address, and EIN or social.
And there is a difference between vendors and contract labor. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the lesson, though. Between the contractors, not contract labor, I'm sorry. We also can need to set up our customers. So we're going to go through that. We're just going to go to sales, customers, and then just click new. And then again, we'll go through and fill out all of the applicable fields on that one as well. There's a lot of things that you can import when you're setting up your file, and that'll save you a lot of time. And you can just simply import it. The bank data can be imported, customers can be imported, vendors, and the chart of accounts. So that'll save you from going in and entering them in one at a time. If you have them in another system, that maybe you could export it into Excel and then fine tune it to fit those headings to where it'll update. She pulled up the import data screen.
So on this screen is also where you can import from your QuickBooks desktop. And QuickBooks will help streamline that so that everything pulls over accurately. You don't have to key in everything individually. It will import it super easy most of the time. Most of the time it's a simple process, but
Yeah, most of the time it's a simple process, but every now and then you do run into some hiccups. Payroll is a really big thing. You want to make sure your payroll is set up correctly. If it's not, you're going to have lots of issues down the road. So Madeline's going to run through a payroll for us and give us the gist of that.
so typically to get to your payroll, you would just click on payroll on the left-hand side. I have to get to it a little different since this is a sample file. I hope I didn't just break it. Let's think. Okay, so the payroll also has an overview screen. So when you go to first set up payroll, if you go to the overview screen, it'll say add payroll service, and you'll click that, and then they'll list all their different products. You choose whichever one you want. And then it has the setup tasks all underneath. This literally walks you through step by step everything you need for payroll. You'll want to make sure all these setup tasks are completed, and then if you forget anything, it'll show up on this to-do list down at the bottom. The main thing that most people forget is signing the authorization forms for QuickBooks to make the e-payments and file reports. If you don't do that, it will look like QuickBooks is making your payroll tax deposits, but it will never clear your bank and you will get penalties. So please make sure you do that. So to set up your employees, you would go to the employees tab. This is just like vendors, customers, everything. You click add an employee. If you put their email, you can send them a link to actually go online, and they will enter all their W-4 information, their banking information. You can let them do all that. You can also change like their privacies, and they can just get pay stubs or their W-2s. You can have it where they don't actually set up all their stuff. They'll just get their W-2s and pay stubs. So let's just pretend like we're setting someone up. To set up an employee in QuickBooks, you have to have their address, social, and birthday. Those are the three most important things that you need in QuickBooks. You also have the option for the email, phone number. If this is the only way you keep up with your employees, I recommend you to fill out absolutely everything, but you technically only need address, social, and birthday. So you would enter their birth date, social security number, and then on the rest of their setup, you have your employment details. This is where you'll enter their hire date and choose the pay schedule. If this is the first employee setting up, it'll just say add pay schedule, and you would set up whatever the pay frequency will be. And then that will carry over to all the other employees. You would just select it on them. There's not like a separate section you go to set up pay items or schedules. It's all underneath an employee setup.
And that is one of the things that's really different from QuickBooks Desktop. You would go in and set up all of your items and then select it on each employee. But this, you do it from within the employee.
On 1099s, are you gonna set them up there or no?
For like contract labor, you would set them up under the contractors tab.
Contractors?
Make sure they're not set up under employees. You want them under contractors.
Okay.
And you can, if you set them up under contractors instead of vendors, then you can direct deposit through QuickBooks. If you set them up under the vendors, you can't pay them direct deposit through the QuickBooks file. So contract labor, I recommend setting up under a contractor. Which it's under the employees. It's weird, they're not technically employees, but
Right.
that's how QuickBooks has it. Yes, ma'am.
We have employees that are salaried versus employees that are hourly. What I ran into when I did this recently, I added an hourly employee, and I previously had been only working with salary. You get two different names for your pay week or your pay schedule or whatever it's named. The first one for our salaried employees was every Friday, and then when I added the hourly, hers was every Friday too, or whatever. But you can't just, they don't all come up on the same list. Hourly and salaried are in different lists.
You should be able to run them together. It should be able to run on one pay schedule. It doesn't matter if they're hourly or salary. These employees, I can't run an actual payroll in here, but they should all be set up as, it would still all be on the same pay schedule, which would be the,
Okay, maybe I can just change it.
It makes me think that when you were setting it up, it may have made you create a new pay schedule
Maybe.
instead of just letting you pick that
Maybe.
original.
That's possible.
so if you were to run your payroll, you would just click the run payroll after you have all your employees in it, which also you can import employees to. You run your payroll. I can't show you that screen in the sample file, but it's just all the employees. You enter their hours or their salary, and then you would just preview the payroll, and then it lets you look over it before you submit. If you're submitting direct deposit, you'll want to make sure you have all your banking information and each employee's set up. But also in the payroll settings, if you go to the gear icons and payroll settings, there's a bank account section, and you'll need to link that to your actual bank account. So it will have you log into your bank account and it automatically links it. If you're printing paychecks, there's also the printing section right under bank accounts, and you'll have different paycheck options. I highly recommend you to align the check. So you'll print a test check and then align it, because QuickBooks Online is whack. Sometimes the print just is out of line, so it will give you the option to like line it up. You'll hold it up to the check and line everything up. After you run your payroll, to do the payroll taxes, there is the taxes section on the left hand of the screen. You'll go to payroll tax. They'll have the 941 payments, TWC 940, depending on what entity and everything you are. If it says paying automatically, that means QuickBooks is just going to process that payment whenever it's due. You also have the option when you're setting it up to do it where you initiate the payments through QuickBooks. I personally like that feature because I don't trust software all the time, so I like going in and just hitting pay now. And you'll click pay, and then it'll give you the date, and you can select whatever date. It'll tell you what date it's due, so if you select a date after, it will give you a warning, but then you'll just hit pay. This is also the tab where you have your payroll tax forms. So you would just go to the filing, and if there was a 941 form coming up, it will show here. And then you'll also have all the forms that you've already filed in the archived forms.
One mistake that sometimes people make is they forget to change their TWC rate at the beginning of the year. So always make sure you change that rate for the Texas Workforce Commission, or if you have other state payroll, make sure you change it before that first payroll. And Madeline can show you how to get there.
That's also in the gear icon. You go to payroll settings again, and you'll have your federal tax and your state tax. So your federal tax, you'll want to make sure is set up on the right deposit schedule. So if you are a semi-weekly depositor, you pay your payroll taxes with every single payroll. You'll want to make sure you have that set before the quarter starts. If you start making payments or you file reports, you cannot change this on your own. You will have to contact support, and they will have to change it, and they'll ask for your 941 forms. They need all sorts of proof, so just make sure it's set up accurately before.
It will make your life much easier to not have to contact support.
And then right after the federal tax is the state tax. And so if it was TWC, this is where you would put your account number. TWC is typically quarterly, and then you would put your rate. Back on the contractors, so say we're paying 1099 contract labor people. You'll set them up on the contractors tab, just like the employees tab. The whole setup is basically the same. You would put their name, you can put their email so that they can set up everything for themselves. Or if you just want to set them up on your own. Then you would set them up, add, make sure you have an EIN or social. 1099s are absolutely awful trying to get that together at the end of the year. So make sure you have an EIN, social, and an address.
And I think Madeline mentioned this earlier, but if you do have a contract labor, someone that you're gonna pay through this contractor, you can also do direct deposit if you do it through the contractors. If you just set them up as a regular vendor and you pay them, you will not have that option to do direct deposit. You will only be able to write them a check.
If you, with contractors, if you wanna pay them like, so some of my jobs are like $1,500 and I don't wanna pay all of it up at once, I just wanna pay the 5 year. Is it possible to do that for the direct deposit, or do I have to just, if it's the total, I can just send it all at once? I have to send it all at once? If that makes sense.
That, you can just do the 5,000 at a time. That's up to however, like you have it worked out with the contract labor people. So yeah, you could just do the 5,000 at a time. You would just have to keep record of that yourself on how much, yeah.
Okay,
I don't think there's a really good way of,
like break it.
I don't think QuickBooks has a good way of keeping track of that for you.
So now we've covered payroll, and we've covered the contractors. Now let's just say you need to write a regular check to Walmart. To do that, you would just simply go to expenses, and then expenses again. New transaction, and here you have lots of different options of anything you're needing to enter. You can enter time activity bill, expense, check, purchase order, vendor credit, and pay down credit card. But for this example, we're just going to do a check. So you're gonna wanna choose your payee. You're gonna pay Books by Betsy. You're gonna wanna choose your bank account, and that's really critical. Let's say you have a savings account and a couple of different checking accounts. Make sure you have the right one selected. And then you're gonna wanna select your payment date. If it's something that's not after the fact and it's something you're doing right now, it'll just be your current day. If you're wanting to print the check out of QuickBooks, you can select to print it. If this is after the fact, you would unselect that and then put the actual check number that you hand wrote that check for. Then you want to select the category to where you want that coded. And then for the description, make sure you put good memos, especially if it's something unusual that you purchased, something that your accountant may question when they're looking at your books at the end of the year. It'll really help them out and alleviate some phone calls for you. And then simply just save and close on that. Another good habit to be in is to reconcile your bank accounts monthly. That's really important just to make sure everything is in QuickBooks. You can run your reports, but if you're not sure everything's in there, your reports aren't accurate. So you need to reconcile. And to get to the bank reconciliation, you're gonna go to the accounting on the side and click reconcile. And if it's the first time, you'll have to go through the get started. And all you'll need to do is select the account that you're wanting to reconcile. And then your beginning balance should automatically pull from before, and it should match the beginning balance on that bank statement that you have. You'll input manually the ending balance on that bank statement, and you'll also enter in the statement date on that bank statement. And then say start reconciling. And you'll want to take that bank statement and go through, and you're going to want to select each one of the payments that clear the bank, and then you'll want to go to your deposits tab and clear each one of those as well. At the end of the day, your difference should be 0. If it's not, typically 9 times out of 10, it's a transaction that cleared the bank that you probably don't have in QuickBooks and you just need to go in and enter it, or you were entering in some after the fact transactions really quickly and you typoed a number, but you can get it all fixed. So you have the option, if say you're out of balance and you're in a hurry and you're just like, I'm just gonna start over tomorrow, you have the option to close without saving. If you feel like you're kinda close and you wanna come back, you can do save for later and pick up right where you left off the next day or even later in that day. If you have your balance difference of 0, you can just hit finish now and you're reconciled. There is a history by account, and you can go here, select your bank account and the applicable dates, and you'll see a list of all your previous bank reconciliations if you want to go back and look at a previous reconciliation. This doesn't have anything pulling just because this is a sample file. But that'll really come in handy if you need to go back and look at anything, or if your accountant says, hey, can I see your June bank reconciliation? This is where you would go to print it. Reports are also very helpful. They're going to keep you in line and help you to see how everything is going. Just simply go to reports, and there's lots of different types. You can put reports in your favorites, and that'll help speed up your time because you can just simply go there and click really fast. You have the business overview section, and then you have the who owes you section, sales and customers, what you owe, expenses and vendors, sales tax, employees, and for my accountant. One report that we really want to show you is the general ledger, and it's under for my accountant. We'll open that up. The general ledger is a good report to look at, maybe monthly, quarterly. You can go through that report and skim through it and say, hey, why do I have gasoline coded to office expense? If you run into that, you can actually click on a transaction and you can change the coding right there and fix it as you're going through it. And that's really going to catch a lot of errors because sometimes our fingers get type heavy and we accidentally code to the wrong thing. But if you go through that general ledger, you can make sure you have all your office expense with the office, all your gasoline with the gasoline, and then you can, as you're looking at it, actually fix it as you're going through it.
Can you delete one? Like if something's out of whack?
Like if the transaction doesn't need to be there at all?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, we'll show you that.
You would just click more and then void or delete. Typically, you want to void anything you don't really want to delete unless it really, truly never should have been there.
Okay. And another report that'll kind of tell you how you're doing is the profit and loss. And it's also under the business overview. And here you can select your dates for whatever period is applicable, or you want to look at the whole year, the prior year, the month, and you can see your total income and your total expenses. Now let's say that you're looking at it and you say, accounting is $250. I didn't pay my accountant this month. Why do I have $250 there? Well, click on it and you can see what is being coded there to make up that amount. And you say, oh man, I did pay my accountant, I just forgot. But if you click on it, if you needed to make a change, let's say that it wasn't your accountant and it was Walmart and you just typoed again, you can click on it from right there and change it to where it needs to be. So that'll help you out a lot as well. Another really useful report is your balance sheet, and it's in the same section under reports, business overview. And you can again change it for whatever period that you're wanting to see. And then you can see all your assets, your liabilities, and just like the other two reports, you can drill down and see what you have in there.
You said asset liability is that for properties and stuff that the business owns and all that?
Yes, so your assets would be your bank accounts, land you own, and then your liabilities would be your note payables and payroll taxes, things like that. So let's say that you really like the profit and loss detail report and you're tired of scrolling down. If you star it, you'll add it to your favorites and then it'll go to the top. So any report that you use a lot, I recommend that you do add it to the favorites. It'll just, every little second that you save makes things better. There's also an open invoices report that comes in handy, and there's an unpaid bills detail. There's lots of really good reports, but those two are ones that people really like as well, and it's really useful.
Also, if you customize anything, you can save that customization and it'll save under the custom reports and say who created it too. So like if your employee creates this grand report and saves it, you'll have access to that later.
Speaking of customizing, why don't we customize a general ledger or a balance sheet and just kind of show them?
So you'll just click the little customize at the top and you can change the columns that pull here. If you don't need the split detail, get rid of it. You just get rid of it by unchecking it. You can add pretty much any column. And then you can also filter. If you're just needing to pull a few different accounts, you can filter to those specific accounts.
One thing that I like to do, and we can do it as an example, is I don't like to just see the amount and the balance. I like to see the debits, the credits, and then the balance. So if you scroll down, you can actually select debit and credits. Oops. And then you can unclick any that you accidentally click, and then you can drag them around so that they're in order. You don't want credit before debit. And then you can run the report, and now you have your debits, your credits, and your balance. You can go ahead and save that, the customization, just so they can see that. And name it whatever makes sense to you, so you know what customization that you did.
And then that report will show up in your custom reports.
And that also will save you a lot of time. If you're gonna customize a report every single month, go ahead and save it. So you can just go click on it and change that date. Anything to save time and make your day go better, that's the way to do it. I don't know, probably many of you have heard about bank feeds. Bank feeds is really a good thing, and it seems to work pretty well in QuickBooks Online. It's a feature that allows you to connect your bank accounts and credit cards to QuickBooks. It allows you to track and manage your receipts and expenses without having to manually go in and enter every single one of those transactions. So on the bank feed screen, keep in mind that what's there is not actually in your bank balances or any of your accounts. It's just sitting there pending, waiting for you to do something with it. So anything that's showing up there is not affecting your actual accounts or bank balances at that time. And Madeline will kind of go through and show us some more detail about the bank feeds.
Bank feeds is literally my favorite feature in QuickBooks Online, if it's set up properly. If it's not set up properly, it will be awful. So you will link your account, just like you linked for payroll. You click link account, you log into your bank account, and it actually links to your QuickBooks. So it will download those transactions every so often. This one says updated moments ago. So if it doesn't say updated moments ago and it says updated 14 days ago, you'll want to click the little update so that all your transactions will pull into the file. When they pull in, they are under the for review screen, and you'll have the option to add them, you can match, or you can record it as a transfer. So if you are writing checks out of QuickBooks, you want to make sure you are adding these or matching these transactions. So on this check, it says one match found. We wrote this check out of the QuickBooks file, printed it, sent it to the vendor. So we want to match it to that transaction that's already in the QuickBooks. You don't want to add it, because then you're duplicating transactions. So
Will
let's
it let
just-
you actually do it in a
Yeah.
text file?
So this one, QuickBooks will try to be smarter than it should be sometimes, but it will try to match it for you. And if there's multiple different checks for that exact same amount, it will pull those under here as well, and you'll make sure it has the right record. Say match, and then once you hit match or add, it is actually in your file. Until you do that, it's still sitting in this little pending state. It's the for review, which means it hasn't been entered into the file yet.
Does it give an option there to split out the transaction? For example, for
Yes.
Walmart, sometimes Walmart's fuel, sometimes it's.
So if you do categorize, you can, split at the bottom, line.
Yeah.
You would click split.
Yeah.
And then it pops up a bigger field and you can do multiple different accounts in one transaction.
Okay, gotcha.
And it only shows 2 right there, but you can add more lines if you need. It was right there.
If there's a vendor that you pay every single month, I would recommend setting up a rule. So you would create the rule, say this is to our accountant, so we're just gonna name it accountant. And then we would say, of course I chose the cake one. So if it comes through from the bank and it says Books by Bessie, you can have it to where it will automatically add it to your QuickBooks file. You can say auto add. So as soon as it says Books by Bessie, you can have it auto add to the right account. That way you don't have to go through the for review screen and take all those out. You'll just have the ones left that aren't usual everyday transactions. The rules take some time to set up, but once you have them set up, it helps a lot. It speeds up the process. You can have it where they don't auto add. If you just take off little auto add, let me go back to that. So go to categorize, create a rule. And if you turn off the auto add, it will just categorize it in the for review screen. So you can still add or match, but it'll have the rule automatically pulling to the screen.
So it's really important if you have a transaction that's needing to be matched, that you don't add it. And I think she already mentioned that, but just to say it again, we see that happen a lot. Whereas you already have that transaction entered into the physical QuickBooks, it's showing up on that screen. If you click add, it's gonna add it again into that file and duplicate. So make sure that you're really careful to match if you need to match instead of add. What about if you need to not add it at all? It doesn't need to be matched or added. That is when you can actually exclude it, and Madeline can show us how to do that.
So if it's a transaction, I don't really know why you would exclude a transaction, but if it's in QuickBooks, you don't want to add it, you don't want to match it, you just don't want it there at all. You would click the little box and it'll pull up this section at the top and you'll say exclude. You can also, with these boxes, you can select all of them and exclude all of them at the same time, or if you just select all deposits, you can accept all the deposits all at one time instead of having to go through each one individually.
I was trying to think of when that would come into play. I think that's if you might have choose your dates wrong.
If the bank feeds duplicate.
Yes.
You want to exclude.
Whenever you import in and the date's not quite right, you need to import it again. But the bank feeds really are nice, and when you do it through there, and whether you add it or you match it, when you go to do your bank reconciliation that we looked at earlier, all those transactions that you added or matched from that screen will automatically be selected. So if you use the entire bank feeds, then when you do your bank rec, everything's already selected that's cleared the bank, and your difference is 0, and you reconcile the bank just like that. So it really is a nice feature. Like she said, it's one of her very favorites.
So like this one, we added through the bank feeds, so it shows that it cleared on whatever date it comes through the bank feeds. It'll say cleared, it'll have that cleared date, and then since we added it through bank feeds, it's already checked on our bank reconciliation screen. So if you're doing everything through bank feeds and you're matching your bank rec, you'll go into the bank rec, everything will be checked, it should be 0, and you're done. Super easy.
A lot of accountants will set a closing date and password in your file. Let's say after they finish the tax return, they've made all their journal entries, made your file perfect and pretty, and they don't want you to change the past because otherwise it won't match your tax return anymore. So a lot of times they'll enter that in. So if you try to change the past, it's gonna pop up and say, hey, there's a closing date, do you have a password? Well, even if you know that password, instead of just changing it, reach out to them and say, hey, I got this message, and they can tell you whether or not you should actually make that change or not. Let's say that you want to do the closing date and password because you don't want your staff to change the prior month after you've made everything perfect. So if you want to set up a closing date and password on your own, you can do that by going to the gear icon, accounts and settings, the advanced tab, and then you're going to select the little pencil edit icon, and then where it says close the books, you can turn that on, and then let's say you want to close out as a 12/31/22, and then you have two options. You can allow changes after there's just a warning, or you can allow changes after the warning and they enter the password. That's really the safest because, you know, we all are in a hurry at times, and sometimes if we just see a warning, we just say, okay, we keep going. But if you have to actually enter a password, sometimes that makes us stop for a minute and say, should I do this or not? So that is something that is really a helpful tool. There are some things that happen whenever you're setting up your QuickBooks file. Sometimes the opening balance equity account doesn't get cleared out. And in this test file, that's actually the case. If you pull up a balance sheet that we looked at earlier, you want to make sure you don't have anything in that opening balance equity. At the end of the day, after the setup, it should be 0. If it's not, you can click on it from within the report, see the transactions in there, and then drill down on them and allocate them correctly. More than likely, it's just a typo whenever things were getting input, and you can get it fixed right there, just like we looked at earlier, actually going in and changing it. If you have transactions as you're working, let's say you bought a new vehicle or you sold a new vehicle, you're just not sure exactly how to book that whole process. You can set up an account, either call suspense, questions, ask my accountant. Go ahead and code those transactions there. And then in the memo, put a really good detail. Sold my 2020 Chevrolet truck, or whatever it is, so that the accountant knows exactly which vehicle was sold, what was purchased, and then they can get that allocated when they're looking at your books. I mean, obviously you don't want to put every transaction to suspense, but your big ones that you're just not sure of, but put good details on that. Sometimes we run into where you want to find a transaction. Let's say I know I just input a check for so-and-so or a certain amount. Madeline can show you how you can search that.
You would click the little magnifying glass and go to search. I always like the advanced search because then you have more, you can choose exactly. It was a check. Let's see. I recorded a check to Cool Cars. Apparently it didn't. You would search, like you know you recorded this check, but you don't remember what amount you put on it. So you could search the check, books by Bessie, there's your check, click on it. Oh, you did it for the wrong amount, you can change it from there. Or if you are looking for a specific amount, say your bank rec is off and you can't figure out why, and it's off like an even amount. you can go search for that amount and see if you can find a check that's for that amount that's for some reason not in the right bank account or something.
And let's say that you wrote a whole bunch of checks and recorded them, and they were all selected to print. But you got a phone call, you stepped away, and you got out of that whole screen. The easiest way to get back to that,
I would just go to your expenses. You can select all the checks that say print and say print check, and it will then, for vendor checks, it will automatically come up with the little align check setup, and so you would go through your alignment and then print your check.
and at some point or another, you more than likely will have to contact support about something. So in order to do that, you just simply click help.
I always say talk to a human. I don't want to talk to a computer. I want to talk to a human. And then you'll have to give a little bit of detail as to why you're contacting support. Like say it's a payroll issue. So you would just say payroll setup, something, and then they will make you choose a few more things, but eventually they will let you talk to an actual person. You can say chat, have them call you. I don't like that. I would prefer to either chat with them. You used to be able to call, but now they'll call you back. So I just typically chat, and it's pretty quick. The chat's pretty much always helpful. Every once in a while you find someone who can't help you. I close out, go back in, find someone else.
A benefit of the chat too is you have proof of what they told you. You can print out that chat and put it in your records, because that's what that assistant from QuickBooks helps you do. And then you know exactly what you were told.
Is the printout for the chat within the chat box, or do you have to go?
You should be able to say print at the bottom of it.
When you're, okay,
Yes, in the chat box.
okay, cool.
And that's really it. You just want to take your time setting it up. Really on those bank feeds, take your time setting up those rules. It might take you a little bit more time up front, but in the end, it's going to save you a ton of time.
On the rules, since you brought this back up, when you're in the banking screen, you can actually go to the rules tab, and you'll have all of your rules that you use. And so if one rule is no longer applicable, like that's not where you coded anymore, you can go in and edit the rule. You can also delete the rule. If there's something that's very similar to the same thing, you can copy it and make a few tweaks on it and then save that rule as well.
Another thing is sometimes your vendor list will kind of get out of control as you've been in business for a while. You know you're not paying so-and-so anymore. They went out of business or whatever might have happened. You can go in and you can actually make that vendor inactive too, to keep that list neat and clean. Anything to save you time looking through a bunch of stuff that you might not need.
And that you would just do with the little drop down on the side of your vendors.
You also can make your employees inactive.
You would go into their setup and go to the employment details, and you would mark them. You can either say they're not on payroll anymore, paid leave of absence, whatever happened. We're gonna say they're terminated. And then they will no longer show up on your employee list. If you need to see all the employees, even the active ones, you can say all employees in this little filter instead of just active employees. And so all the terminated, not on payroll, they'll also show up here.
And it's also a good idea at quarterly payroll time to actually run some payroll reports yourself, is what we recommend, and looking over them, make sure that it looks correct, that the forms look correct, instead of just 100% trusting QuickBooks, just in case there was a glitch in any of the setups. That way it would stand out to you. So if you go to reports and in the payroll section,
I recommend printing the payroll summary by employee because then it will have the full amounts for each employee for the entire quarter instead of like a payroll journal with every single check. Okay, it might not show anything. If it does, you're in trouble. If it doesn't have anything here, you might have ran your payroll wrong.
and if you wanted to see a list of checks written to an individual, because you can run that for a quarter, a year, whatever period you want, you can actually drill down on the gross wages or net wages of that employee and see a list of the dates and the amounts for them. And sometimes that's helpful too if you need to see how many times were they paid in a certain period or anything like that.
So like we said at the beginning, QuickBooks, it does change fairly often. I'll log in one day and the next day something's in a completely different area. If you can't find it, my first option, I always look in the gear icon. That seems to be where a lot of the things are. You have your reconcile in here, your chart of accounts. Most things are in this gear icon. You can also access things multiple different ways. Like if you want to write checks, you can go to the expenses, or you can just hit new and you have all the things you can do. You can do payroll, you can do checks, your deposits, everything through the little new tab.
The audit log can also be your best friend. Let's say you have something that keeps happening in your QuickBooks file and you're not sure which of your employees is accidentally making the same mistake over and over. Well, again, if you click on that gear icon and click audit log, you can see a record of everything that was done and by which login user did it. And that,
Absolutely everything. As soon as they sign in, when they sign out, you can see everything that was done in the file.
and that's really good for training purposes, because most of the time, that individual didn't know that they were doing something incorrectly. So if you can see a pattern there, then you know, okay, I need to spend some time with so-and-so, we need to go over this area and give them the training that they need. And that's really it, just take your time setting it up and it'll save you a lot of time.
Any other questions while they're here? Take their brains.
I do have a question. Is it me?
Go ahead.
I thought she was looking at that. So I have a couple of different ways that I bring in, credit card transactions. So does QuickBooks really have a link where it could be seamless? So I don't have to have this
You can-
transaction software company and this company, you know what I'm saying? I'd like to make it all.
You can link the actual, like your
Do they even
sales
offer that kind of service? I know they're a bookkeeping service, but do they offer that? Because you can actually, I believe you can send an invoice, right? Correctly
Yes.
from there to the client.
Yes.
All they do is just pick up their credit card and put their information in, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So somewhere that's a transaction software
Yes.
thing.
There's also different apps. If you go to the app store, there's multiple different apps that might be able to link it easier. I don't know something in particular, but there's a ton of apps.
Stripe. Look up Stripe for them.
And Stripe will do it. Okay, I haven't tried Stripe. I'm with another.
Well, you're talking about, you could also use QuickBooks Payment Services. She could, if she's accepting.
Yes.
Credit card.
Oh, okay.
You could, yeah. You could use the QuickBooks
Okay,
payment
let me
system
write that
itself.
down. I need to investigate it further because what I've got seems way too
So you use
antiquated to me.
multiple different sales systems, like point of sales?
Yeah, what comes into our RV park and the software that we use for the RV park has that. But when I go in to make, like, they wanna pay for something else other than paying for a reservation, it looks so antiquated. You know what I'm saying? So I just think I need to switch to some other company where it looks, and something that works seamlessly too, but. you know,
There's
that's-
a lot of point of sales that will link with QuickBooks. Square links directly with QuickBooks. The
Right.
majority of them will. and it'll just pull them all in automatically, all your transactions.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Can you guys also touch base on, this is something that I ran into last week. Typically, I've been getting paid cash or check, depositing them into my account and doing it that way. I had one customer that paid through the QuickBooks. They got the email and then they had the option to pay online with the card or whatever. Can you just talk about like the fees, how there's those different fees? Cause I had to call QuickBooks because I wasn't sure about the processing
actual
fee
fees?
for credit card versus like ACH. Cause there's those multiple options that they can view when they open the email to pay.
We don't know a whole lot about
Okay.
the fees specifically. That
Okay.
would be a more QuickBooks support kind of thing.
Okay,
Um,
so I will
But
touch
they
on
should
that.
have a breakdown of exactly which fees are for everything, and you should be able to
Yeah,
have that listed somewhere there.
And again, it could change day to day.
That is
yeah.
well.
Any other questions?
In the customer setup, you can go in and set them as non-tax or whatever, and you can set the tax base to be what Nacogdoches is at 8125. But sometimes when we go in and do an invoice, it changes it back to base town tax or whatever, that is base area tax. Why does it keep changing?
That is a good question.
Is it based on the area code, the zip code? Yeah, they're basing it off the zip code, and I think when you base it off the zip code, Nacogdoches. Because Nacogdoches, if you're in 7565, it's 8.25, but if you're at 75964, then it's a lower tax rate. But unfortunately, the way the comptroller office does it, is to base it off my location.
And the city limits outside our city is what it is, and it's approved. Outside of city limits is 725, and inside the city limits is 825.
I don't, if it's set up in the customer setup, then that is what it should be pulling.
You might have some kind of automatic lookup.
We went through over 1,000 customers and make sure that all of them were set to the same thing. And we're having to watch our invoices because every now and then, there's one that's thrown in there, the area tax rate instead of 8.2.
Do you have a default set by any chance on your system? Because if you have the company default, it might change the rate, but it should be whatever is set on the actual file.
What we had to do is, we went from desktop to online, and they had to convert it twice, and it still didn't set it, especially sales tax.
I was fixing to say, I wonder if it's a glitch.
I've noticed on mine, it usually just says by location. So like for me, I go to locations to do services, where the location is at is, and it usually brings it up, but I always double check through comptroller
Yes.
with that address to double check on it.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I use Gusto for payroll, so would I just, not put the payroll into QuickBooks, or is there
You-
any advantage of?
You would want the transactions in your QuickBooks, and I would also do, does Gusto link with QuickBooks?
It should.
Thanks.
It should link and it should bring in the payroll completely. It should break out the payroll details so that your balance sheet and P&L are all accurate. If it's not linking, I would go into the Gusto settings and you should be able to have it link automatically, or go into these apps and link it on the back end. But it will walk you through linking if you already have it.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
After you get it all set up, your, the accounts, after we get it all set up and all that, is there the services that we send it to you and you take care of our books as business owners?
Yes.
We do that for a lot of clients. They want to do it all themselves, but they want us to either look at it on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis.
Yeah, that's what we're interested in.
Okay.
We'd like to. I don't wanna touch it. I got enough stuff to do. And that's not my field.
Okay, yeah, we have our cards right here and feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help.
You can do as little or as much as you want, so.
As much?
So I was told that, your company now has cloud accounting capabilities, where, is that true? Let me just ask that first. A client can log on and
Yes,
see
we
their
do have,
books at any time of the day,
well, if they're using QuickBooks, we have a QuickBooks Online accountant, so we have access to all of our clients' QuickBooks files, and they'll log into their QuickBooks on their own server, however, whenever they want to, and we can also log into the exact same file whenever, like at any time. On the cloud-based, we do have like portals and stuff for all the other documents that we send back and forth to clients. Other than that, I think that's pretty much all we do with the cloud-based, as far as I know so far.
There could
So-
be more that just we're not
So
involved in.
basically, you kind of operate like the title companies do. They have cloud-based software and everything's secured back and forth
Yes.
through their, whatever you call it, or portal, whatever.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's what you guys do,
Yes.
is force for your cloud-based.